Well, welcome everyone. This is our first poster session at this conference. We have a great lineup of 51 posters over the next 3 days. Those of you who have been to the Academy Week will remember that a highlight of our face-to-face meetings has always been a 1-minute poster presentation period. We've recreated that this year in virtual mode. We've had a few hiccups, as you probably detected already. It's always a challenge to try something new. Every poster presenter will have 1 slide and 1 minute to introduce their poster and to convince you that you should visit them when we go into our poster breakout rooms at the end of the presentation. For each poster, I'll invite the speaker and read out the title of your poster. And while I'm doing this, please unmute, and then I will turn to you and we will start your 60-second clock. And when the bell rings at the end, we'll need to move on to the next presentation, even if you're not finished. That's what creates a bit of the excitement and fun. Now, for all of you in the online audience, please keep a note of the numbers and names of the presenters you would like to meet. After the presentations, you can open the breakout rooms, find them, and have a chat. So let's begin now with our first presentation. Our first presenter is Eden Augustus from the University of the West Indies in Barbados, who's going to speak on interventions in small island developing states to improve diet. Eden, over to you.
Thank you. Our review was done using the PRISMA framework, and our search terms were applied to 12 health and other databases. Our screening processes were done in duplicate, and we used Cochrane-appropriate tools to assess study quality. 24 unique records were included from the Caribbean, Pacific, Mauritius, and Singapore. 5 of a randomized design, 3 assessed at low risk. 9 studies included a local food approach, 8 promoting locally produced food and traditional dietary behavior, which showed significant improvements in dietary intake and nutrition knowledge. Of these, 2 were garden-based nutrition education interventions, supplemented with practical skills. Our findings suggest that multifaceted interventions applying a local food approach are likely to be the most effective, but there's an overall lack of robust evidence and further investigation is needed. Thank you.
Our next presentation is from Regine Kanga at Ecuador, Cameroon, who is going to speak on intensification of market gardening to improve the resilience of crisis-affected people. Regine.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Food distribution has long been used as a resilient approach for crisis-affected people. In these particular cases, we choose to teach people how to fish rather than give them fish. So crisis-affected people who are food and nutritionally insecure were trained along the vegetable value chain through farmer field school and were supported with inputs such as seed. They were able to produce 2 times more vegetables with the good agricultural practice that they were taught within the integrated pest management plot compared to the farmer plot. The sale of the vegetable produce contributes to improve the beneficiary livelihood, who increases their vegetable consumption. This vegetable consumption will eventually increase their health status. We conclude that market gardening can be scaled up as a resilient approach for crisis-affected people. For more information, kindly join us at the room.
Thank you, Regine. Our next speaker is Adani Kabeda from the University of Gondar in Ethiopia. Adani is going to speak on how residential food environment, household wealth, and maternal education affects consumption of plant-based vitamin A-rich foods. Over to you, Adani.
Thank you very much. The topic is what is the influence of residential food environment, particularly the availability of vitamin A-rich fruit and vegetables on the consumption of preschooler children in Addis Ababa. It is an Addis survey. As you know, the vitamin A deficiency is a serious public health concern in low-income countries, including Ethiopia, and also night blindness and because of above the WHO cutoff points, and also there is an educated consumption of vitamin A-rich foods. Nowadays, there is a call to conduct the research how a food environment drives dietary habits in low-income settings. We used a multi-stage sampling procedure to visit 5,467 households and also 233 residential food environments, and also we consider 2,568 vendors to assess the availability of vitamin-rich fruit and vegetables, and we use a multi-level analysis. And also finally, the consumption of plant-based vitamin-rich food groups was low in Addis Ababa preschooler children, and also residential availability of vitamin-rich food. Thank you very much. I think that is, yeah.
Our next speaker is Lisa von Grafenstein from Amana in India, who is going to present her poster on impacts of double fortified salt on anemia and cognition. Lisa.
Okay, thank you. I'm Lisa. I'm currently an Amana fellow, and I'm introducing you to our study. It's called Impacts of Double Fortified Salt on Anemia and Cognition for your follow-up evidence from a school-based nutrition intervention in India. So with large-scale food fortification programs for children at scale and long-term follow-ups of these are rare, we asked, does a 2.5-year longer school-based delivery of the double fortified salt increase the effectiveness of the treatment in reducing anemia among children? We exploited the staggered rollout of a fortified salt delivery intervention at the school level in rural Bihar, India, to answer this question. And we find, yes, a 2.5-year earlier and longer treatment benefits child health and retains improvement found after 1 year of treatment. However, the treatment has no impact on the children's human capital outcomes. If you'd like to get to know more about our study, please join me in the Zoom room later.
Thank you, Lisa. Our next speaker is Rujira Goyal from the Council on Energy, Environment and Water in India, who's going to be speaking on her poster on securing nutrition and livelihoods in a climate-changing world. Rujira.
Thank you. Our research looks at the sustainability of the Indian dairy sector. We find that the total emissions from the sector have stagnated, but milk production has risen continuously. Thus, the emissions per liter of milk have declined, as shown in the leftmost graph on your screen. However, an emerging question is whether the sector can sustain this reduction in emission intensity. Going forward, the emission reduction can come from selective breeding, balanced animal nutrition, etc. But scaling these up is challenging in India because, as you can see in the graph in the middle, most animals are kept in small herds of just 2 to 4 animals per household. And while that is on the production side, milk consumption remains highly inequitable.
Sorry, we had a bit of a disconnect. Would you like to finish your presentation?
Yeah, I think I was muted in between, so I'll continue from the middle.
Okay.
So yeah, I was talking about how animals are kept in herd sizes of 2 to 4 animals per household. So while that is on the production side, milk consumption remains highly inequitable. The rightmost graph shows that the highest income groups consume 8 to 10 times more milk than the lowest income groups. So our recommendation is to reduce emission intensities, but also moderate milk consumption in high income groups and channel milk to the needy groups. At the same time, we also recommend promoting more affordable, climate-friendly alternative sources of nutrition. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Rujira. Our next speaker is Watson Leperio from the International Livestock Research Institute, who's going to be talking about validating the Women's Empowerment in Nutrition Index in East Africa. Over to you, Watson.
Thank you. Our study aims to validate novel metrics used to examine knowledge resources agency in relation to women empowerment outcomes in East Africa. We collected data from 328 pastoral women. We used a linear regression model to externally validate WENI. Initial findings show that WENI is statistically significantly associated with women BMI. We also see that institution and agency are among the main contributors to WENI score, and food knowledge is the least contributor. This therefore indicates that women empowerment matters for women BMI. We're now conducting follow-up studies to look at deviance. I invite you to come to our breakout room to more about our study.
Thank you, Watson. We'll now move on to our next presentation from Julia Pastori from Wageningen University, who's speaking on latent class analysis to identify and describe dietary patterns of women. Julia.
Yeah, thank you. Hi, everyone. So we wanted to identify dietary patterns in Nigerian women, and we did it with latent class analysis. We identified 3 different dietary patterns. The first one was characterized by high intakes of grains and tubers, vegetables, and animal source foods. The second one was characterized by low intakes of the majority of the food groups, while the third one was the most diversified with high intakes of the majority of all food groups. We also find that dark green leafy vegetables, other vegetables, meat, poultry, and fish were the food groups that explain the majority of the variation between the 3 dietary patterns. And we saw that the women eating the secondary dietary patterns had higher risk of being underweight, while women eating belonging to the third dietary patterns had higher risk of overweight and obesity. So if you want to know more, you can come to my breakout. Thank you.
Thank you, Julia. Our next presentation by Song Nguyen from Wageningen University on the environmental impact and nutrient adequacy of derived dietary patterns in Vietnam. Over to you, Song.
Good afternoon. So improving diet quality while decreasing environmental impacts, it's an important challenge for food system. In Vietnam, so few studies so far investigated both problems. So this study analyzed the common dietary pattern for females and explore the disease factors. So with PCA, so 3 dietary patterns were identified as you've seen on the screen. So the first patterns highly contribution came from rice, vegetables, meat, while the second one is monotonic diet with rice and vegetables. And in the last one, it's rice, vegetable, and fish are mainly consumed in these patterns. So if we, beside what we learned on the screen, so we found that the current dietary patterns are not healthy in terms of nutrient adequacy, but also contribute greater greenhouse gas emissions than the plant target.
Thank you, Song. Our next presentation is from Passam Chofa from the International Center for Evaluation Development in Senegal, who's going to address the question, are certain infrastructures more conducive to improving nutritious diet for low-income consumers? Over to you, Passam.
Okay, thank you. Seasonality in the availability and price of food is one of the major global health challenges, causing millions of malnourished worldwide, especially in young children and women in developing countries. So with limited resources available at scale, investments made to smooth the intake of nutritious diets must be well designed, gender inclusive, and grounded on strong evidence. So to support this, ICE is conducting an EGM, evidence and gap map, to show the extent of existing evidence and gap on the impact of large-scale infrastructure such as markets, irrigation, or roads on enhancing nutritious diet for low-income consumers. So while this study is still ongoing, we're getting some exciting findings which are emerging. So we encourage you to kind of join our poster viewing and a breakout session for all your inquiries. So thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Passam. Our next presentation today is by Sudhamali Madhuvalala from the Institute of Policy Studies of Sri Lanka, who's going to speak on the political economy, the fiscal policies and regulations to promote healthy diets.
Hello, everybody. Unhealthy dietary patterns are one of the leading behavioral risk factors contributing to escalating non-communicable diseases in Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka has taken various measures, including fiscal policies and regulations, to promote healthy dietary patterns. These policies are developed and implemented within a complex political economic setting. The key objective of this study is to explore how the political economy influences the development and implementation of fiscal policies to promote healthy diets. The study adopted a qualitative approach. From emerging findings, we recommend having focused policies, comprehensive coverage, and active stakeholder participation for developing better policies. For more information, I invite you to join with me at the breakout room. Thank you.
Thank you, Sunamali. Thank you. Our next speaker is Innocent Sanga from Sokoine University of Agriculture in Tanzania. He's going to speak on practices and awareness about nutrition sensitive agriculture amongst key nutrition stakeholders. Over to you, Innocent.
Thank you. My study aimed at assessing the extent to which the concept of nutrition-sensitive agriculture is known and practiced by different key nutrition stakeholders in Morogoro district. The study was conducted in 2 purposely selected wards, which are Mkuyuni and Mvua wards, and these wards were purposely selected because of their differences in agroecological conditions, whereby Mkuyuni ward is relatively mountainous and Mvua ward is more or less like a flatland. So the study was conducted among 115 household heads and other about 30 stakeholders from the government sectors and other non-government sectors. So the study found that majority of the stakeholders, especially at the lower levels at the household, practiced home gardening and kept livestock as the major ways of nutrition.
Thank you, Innocent. Our next speaker this afternoon is Frank Lowe from Imperial College London in the UK, who's going to talk about a dietary intake monitoring system, assessing intake and load. Over to you.
Yep, thank you. This is Frank from Imperial College London. I'm now a postdoctoral researcher working on an AI-based large-scale dietary assessment system supported by Gates Foundation. The aim of our work is to develop customized wearable cameras and AI technology to conduct passive monitoring in order to monitor how households in Africa consume food. In this slide, I've shown some of our newly developed techniques, which are able to help provide guidance for dietitians to conduct dietary assessments. The first one is a bite counting network. It is a new technique for portion size estimation. And another technique I've shown in this slide is a system for image captioning. As we know, for passive monitoring, it will generate a lot of redundant images. And this technique is to extract the useful one out for analysis. If you are interested to know how AI and computer vision can work with dietary assessment, please join me in the breakout room. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Julia Scarpa from the University of Leeds in the UK, who's going to talk about a community-based approach to different contexts in the development of a food. Over to you, Julia.
Hello, everyone. Today I'm going to discuss with you this study that we conducted among the Batu and Bachiga communities in southwestern Uganda. The problem of this study was to find the necessary information to develop comprehensive food list and food databases for indigenous communities. For doing so, we use a mixed method research with a community-based approach, and we use 3 different fieldwork methods. The first one was shop and market assessment, the second one focus group discussion, and the third one individual interviews. And we found that in order to develop comprehensive food list and database for indigenous communities, we need information on food culture and meaning of foods, on climatic, environmental, and demographic factors influencing food, and on social cultural factors affecting portion sizes and meal frequency. Without using this approach, we would have missed 33 Batua and Bachiga plates and foods and forage food. Thanks.
Thank you. Our next presentation today is from Oluwatosin Afeni from the University of Reading in UK, who is going to talk about reallocation of time to agriculture and changes in human energy requirements. Oluwatosin.
Yeah, thank you. Women's work in agriculture is expected to affect also nutritional outcomes through changes in women's socioeconomic status, their time allocation, and their energy expenditure. Our study explored the energy expenditure pathway. We asked, what is the nature of the change to energy expenditure when time is reallocated from each of non-agricultural economic, domestic and care, leisure, self-care, and sleep time uses to agricultural activities? Barring sleep, self-care, and leisure time uses, the idea that women require more energy when they perform more agricultural work is not supported by our empirical data, because other time uses are equally energy intensive in rural livelihoods, and the effects of the type of work on well-being outcomes are not peculiar to agriculture. Please visit our poster for more information. Thank you.
Our next speaker this afternoon today is Sarah Stroud from the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine in UK, who's going to present a poster on development of a dietary application for processing and monitoring paper-based 24-hour recalls. Over to you, Sarah.
Good afternoon. The ASH study follows a cohort of mother-infant dyads in the first 1,000 days in 3 countries. We developed a unique electronic dietary app that can be used for processing and monitoring paper-based 24-hour recalls. As you can see from the slide, there are multiple steps taken for success. All 5 steps have been tested and refined using paper-based 24-hour recalls collected in Senegal. The next step is to test the app in India using the Indian food composition table. To date, the dietary app can translate into different languages, standardize data entry, calculate grams of food consumed and intakes of energy and nutrients by day, by meal, and by food group, and capture data on average in individual recipes. This app will benefit research communities to analyze paper-based dietary intakes as it's adaptable to different country contexts, to different research interests, and data are generated to monitor the quality of data collection. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Our next speaker this afternoon is Daniel Mensah from the University of Warwick in UK, who's going to talk about understanding motivations that increase or reduce meat consumption amongst emerging adults in Ghanaian university food environments. Over to you, Daniel.
Hi, thank you. Meat consumption is both a complicated and delicate issue because it is an important source of high quality protein and micronutrients. It is also, however, been linked to increased risks of non-communicable diseases and large environmental impacts. And so reduced meat diets have been recommended for dual health and environmental benefits. However, emerging adults have been shown in research to be the least to be able to stick to standard dietary guidelines. And so our research sought to use veteran pair interviews and focus group discussions to understand the underlying reasons why young people in sub-Saharan Africa would eat or form the intentions to increase or reduce their meat consumption, and to gauge their willingness to eat less meat for ecological, animal welfare, and health reasons. We came up with 6 thematic themes, and if you want to find out more, join my breakout room. Thank you.
Thank you, Daniel. Speaker is Ilana Clifford from Harvard University in the USA, who's going to present her poster on a novel framework for complex systems approach to understanding seasonality of nutrition outcomes. Ilana.
Hi, thank you so much. So we have designed a new conceptual framework for a complex systems approach to understanding nutrition seasonality in order to address several limitations of previous approaches. So most of what we understand about nutrition seasonality comes from linear frameworks that consider the effects of agroclimatic characteristics on nutritional status unidirectionally. But here we demonstrate that seasonality is an observable property of every system, including Earth and social systems. And we show that seasonality of outcomes is explained as a byproduct of the complex interplays of several systems. So we also show that these interactions are influenced by the natural cycle of climatic factors, which models should reflect instead of grouping seasons into discrete periods. And lastly, we display how policy changes can mediate the link between nutrition seasonality and outcomes as a function of the interplay between human behavior and Earth systems seasonality. Thanks.
Thank you, Ilana. Our next presentation is from Minh Cam Duong from Emory University in the USA, who's going to talk about market access and child nutrition in rural Cambodia.
Hi, everyone. In this study, we investigate the associations of access to market with dietary diversity score and high for HD score in children less than 2 years of age in rural Cambodia. So in Cambodia, there are about 500 food markets. And as shown on the map, food markets concentrated in the lowland areas, but very sparse on the highland areas. And through modeling, we also found that shorter distance to markets is associated with a better dietary diversity score. But it seems that children from wealthier households benefit better from access to markets. So it's possible that children from different socioeconomic groups benefit differently from access to markets, and this should be investigated in the future study. So thank you, and I look forward to see you in the poster section.
Thank you, Ben Cambron. And we go now to our final presentation for this session, which is from Nathaniel Jensen, independent researcher in the United States, who's going to ask the question, do caregivers offer a low-cost option for collecting high-frequency nutrition and health data in remote regions? Over to you, Nathaniel.
Good day, everybody. And thanks for this opportunity to share our work. Together with colleagues from ILRI and FANRPAN, we've been trying to identify approaches for collecting health and nutrition data from populations that are remote or otherwise difficult and expensive to survey. Our proposed solution was to develop a mobile-based platform by which caregivers could collect and submit information on themselves and their children. That platform works completely offline, does not require literacy or numeracy, and collects information on a number of important indicators. We then asked the research question if these caregivers can and will consistently and accurately measure and submit information on their health and nutrition. To test this, we recruited 189 caregivers from a pastoral community in northern Kenya and asked them to collect information and submit it as much or as little as they liked over 12 months. At the same time, we recruited 22 CHVs and asked them to collect the same information from the same people to use as benchmark data. For more information on the study and the results, please visit our poster. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Nathaniel. That brings our session to a close today of presentation. I think you'll agree, 19 presentations, all very interesting and all worth a visit. Thanks very much.